And I request Mr. Arvind Lakshmi Kumar, CEO, Tonbo Imaging, to kindly come onto the dais and chair the panel. And the panelists for the last session of Deftronics 2016 are Dr. Neha Satak, CEO, Astrom Technologies; Narayan Prasad, co-founder, Dhruva Space; Parag Nayak, CEO, Sankhya Labs; Anand Madan Gopal, founder and CEO, Cardiac Design. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for this very young panel, which is concluding Deftronics 2016. Now I request Mr. Anand Lakshmi Kumar to take over.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. It's a pretty long day, so I think you guys must be pretty tired. It's the last session, so it's not always nice chairing a last session because you want to keep people awake. We have some firebrand speakers here, so they will keep you awake. And so essentially, just to give you some perspective in terms of what this session is all about, right? You've heard a lot of industry speakers, you've heard some policy makers. This session is really about startups, right? Early stage companies in defense and aerospace. And to provide a context as to why this is relevant, when you think about in the last few years, right, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, every major asset-heavy industry, right, whether it's logistics, whether it's entertainment, whether it's healthcare, whether it's hospitality, whether it's transportation, they've all been completely disrupted with technology platforms, right? And the companies which have set up in the last 5 years have disrupted companies which were set up in the last 100 years. And defense and aerospace is one of the last bastions of asset-heavy industries, which has not found a disruptive technology, a company which has not been able to disrupt it yet. And one of the reasons why it becomes very relevant for defense and aerospace is when you think about 1960s or 1970s, new technology development which happened in the defense industry found its way to the commercial world. But today, when you look at the power of the consumer electronics hardware, the complexity which goes into it, or the development which goes into it, or the economies of scale which have gone into it, that far surpasses what exists in today's military world. So your smartphone, for instance, has more electronics horsepower than what's there on a 155mm howitzer or a UAV. So the fact that commercial electronics has the power to disrupt, traditional military systems means that there are going to be more startups, right? And today we have one such batch of startups. And so the general panel, the format is really, they'll talk about themselves and the company, and then we'll just go through some questions, and then of course, if you guys have any questions, right? So just a quick, introduction, so you guys can take over.
Okay. Hi, this is Narayan Prasad. I co-founded a startup called Dhruva Space back in 2012. So we started as a small satellite company, and now looking to engineer a small satellite constellation for commercial remote sensing as an end product. So from my side, as I see the ecosystem for the last, as Arvind said, for the last 50 odd years, SMEs in India have grown on, working with defense POCs and ISRO and these guys, from a level of maturing one piece of technology to the next and so on. So where I see an opportunity is for an end product to be developed as a service from space side, so that the hardware and the technology can be a layer, but at the end where actually the commercial industry works is in services. So if we can pivot to that, or the industry can pivot to that kind of a service-based model, then the space economy can actually grow, because India as a space economy is only a $1 billion economy, but the world is a $300 billion space economy. So I think that's where disruption is ripe to be happening. So,
imagine if you're able to stream a full HD video in any location in India. That's the vision we have at Astrom. I'm Neha Satak, the CEO of Astrom Technologies Private Limited. We are an IISc-based startup. We are incubated at IISc. And we want to do this using a constellation of microsatellites. We will launch 150 microsatellites in low Earth orbit. that will provide location-free internet, not just in India, but most of the developing countries. So that is our vision for 2020. Now, we're going to do that with our innovative technology, our communication technology that is going to disrupt technology not just in India, but all over the world. So each of our satellites will provide a capacity of something like 100 Gbps as compared to what is available in the market, which is just 8 Gbps globally. So, and that's where cost of access of internet from space will come down substantially with our technology. So that is what we are doing now. Now, I just wanted to brief you about why internet from space is important. Now, the ground technology has done very well in providing all of us internet in the urban locations and also in many of the semi-urban areas. But to reach each and every one, in a developing country where the number of internet users are very sparsely populated in a rural area, the ground technology has to do a lot more, has to spend a lot more, and also has to spend a lot of time to reach each and every one. Now, what we are proposing is something different. We want to take the space route. Now, what we have found is that delivering internet from space, just like cable TV, cable TV from space, is actually 100 times cheaper. 100 times cheaper as compared to ground technology. If you are going to lay fiber optic cable and tower infrastructure, that's going to be 100 times more expensive than launching satellites and providing internet connectivity from there. So that's why we are in business. Basically, we are trying to provide internet connectivity to all using our very innovative communication technology coupled with our space dream. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
This works. I'm Parag Naik. I represent Sankhya Labs. We probably are one of the oldest one in this batch. Right? The first one to graduate. Yeah. So we started in 2007 building SDR ASIC chipsets. Like Arvind said, originally taking a military technology into the consumer world, and now since last 3 years we've been looking at the solutions, the SDR solutions for defense and internet applications. So one of the immediate applications of our technology is for digital India, providing, well, until the satellites go up and you get 100 Gbps, we start off with 2 Mbps. So we provide terrestrial links as a augmentation to either the optical fiber network or as a complement to the fiber network where fiber can't be laid in hilly regions and northeastern and so on, where SATCOM is actually being used. So unfortunately, I think it's an unfortunate situation. We're in Bangalore, probably almost the world's. I think I can safely say almost all semiconductor is largely built in Bangalore today, right? And we don't have a single indigenous company there. And ours is an attempt to try and do that. It's a difficult task, but yeah, we check along.
Hi, I represent a company called Cardiac Design Labs. Just to give you a perspective of what we do, we're trying to get advanced diagnostics to the masses. I'll give you the impact of what I just said. Today, any form of diagnostics that has to do with the heart is actually a premium segment, which actually is done in a large hospital with a cardiologist and set of technical teams that actually do the diagnosis. The machines that are there out in the field, which is known as the resting ECG machines, work only when acute. So what happens primarily is almost all of the patients, close to 90%, are only picked up at a very late stage that goes to treatment. This is not just a problem of India, this is a problem globally as well. Anybody away from an urban setting has this problem because they cannot just easily walk into a large hospital and get an appointment with a cardiologist. In countries where it's actually controlled with economics, it's even worse because the costs are fairly high. Now, how are we doing this? So what we've done is, whatever these guys do at a large hospital using slightly advanced equipment, that requires a technical team. We've built a system, including a device, that an average nurse in a small hospital with a doctor there should be able to run these tests, which could be an advanced Holter test or a stress test, or even do event monitoring for any sorts of palpitations. The idea is it's not attributed to your last meal. If there is a doubt that can look close to the heart, get it tested. It's inexpensive, and you don't need to be giving it a premium status that you go to the last stage. We would like to flip the coin. Now, this will have tremendous impact because the first time advanced diagnostics will move away from large hospitals to smaller hospitals. This could be PHCs for rural, where somebody else has to play. This could be small hospital with 10 beds. But nevertheless, we would like to get it to all places where people can actually look at it at frontline. I'll give you the statistics. The largest killer in India today is cardiac, not anything else. 64 million patients have this problem. This is not a rich man's disease popularly believed. It's actually cuts across the segment. We have only 6,500 cardiologists addressing the 64 million patients, waiting for everybody to get acute before they get treatment. Now this fits, like Arvind pointed out earlier, this is a civilian side that actually defense was not too far away for us to get into, because they too face the same problems, having their command centers which actually have the senior cardiologists. If you go down to the field clinics and the inspection rooms which have the medical facilities there, all they might have is a resting ECG. It does not filter the early signs of this disease. So we have a fitment that can go into peripheries of such establishments as well as civilian. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So you have two space companies, two communication companies, kind of overlapping, and then you have one affordable healthcare. So one of the things I thought was so that to become clear really what they do in terms of their core expertise, what are their growth plans. Maybe talk a little bit about the technology which you guys are in, why it's competitive, why is it superlative, and of course, what are your ambitions. So Narayan, if you look at Dhruva right now, and the last 5 years, this whole democratization of space has become pretty large, right? So there are so many VCs pouring in money. Ever since Skybox got acquired by Google, there are quite a few companies which are doing it, right? So there's Hera, then there's Planet 3D. So what are you doing which is different from a core technology perspective, and why do you think it's going to make a difference?
So where I think there is technology can add a value in terms of disruption is in actually the way commercial off-the-shelf technology can be used, both in terms of lenses as well as on the system level, right? So the other part is there is often a debate in the space world about the kind of satellites that are getting built, the companies that you told about, like Planet Labs or Hera Systems and so on. So these are companies that have got a lot of money because of the ecosystem in itself, but technologically speaking, what is the value in which at which these images are being commercially sold is a big question that nobody knows at the moment, because this is not market validated yet. But what is market validated is that developing countries need imaging at a low cost, and US companies are not really addressing that per se, and developing countries also need access to satellites at a very affordable price at a time when they need it, when they actually need it on priority, right? So where I think India or we can solve that problem is involve a model where your clients are actually these countries around, and people in those countries who would want access on a priority basis, but at a price which is exponentially less, like 1/100th lesser. So the way that you can do it, or we are trying to do it, is build a consortium. I don't know if you know, there's this consortium called DMC, which is the Disaster Monitoring Consortium, where one satellite is actually shared by multiple people. The problem with satellites is, once you have one satellite, it only goes about one region twice a day probably. But if you want to locate or map only one particular region, it only gives you access like once in 3 days or 4 days. So at the end, you'll have to have multiple birds to actually image. So the way we are trying to solve that is, okay, if we have a network of say 12 satellites from in a microsatellite platform, and we have customers who are interested in sharing this access on the satellite itself. So which means that for the price of one, or based on this real estate kind of sharing mechanism, they're actually getting access to 12 of them, and this at a cost when today the market price of sub-meter resolution satellites vary from $20 to $50 per square kilometer. So if a country like Thailand wants to image its entire landmass at one shot, it will cost them roughly more than a few $1 million, $5 or $6 million in one shot. So that's just for one day's image or one time's image. So you multiply that, it's a huge number. So if you can actually reduce that $20 amount to say 50 cents, is where we are trying to make a difference in both technology innovation and business model innovation. So you need both the layers, because if you only disrupt in, I don't believe that only disruption in technology is good enough. I think business model innovation is also a very critical aspect in space today at the moment. And based on this, the other part is technology transfer in itself. If you look at space from a commercial remote sensing point, US and other markets heavily regulated because of the fears of technology spillover and transfer and things like that. But what we are talking about today is purely now commercial grade electronics and commercial off-the-shelf technology without ITAR kind of regulations and so on. So there is actually a huge market today for even technology transfer of at the service level of using imagery or imaging systems themselves. So that can be also a niche angle where we are trying to see how we can partner with these people who need these and so on. So that is one level. The second level is enabling analytics companies and big data companies and so on. So I know one of my own friends here in Bangalore is doing a crop advisory and a crop insurance based company, and so these are companies that are scalable because they are built on cloud, and they just need fresh imaging at a very low cost. So if today these are the players from a business to business model who want this imaging, and if we can actually get them at 50 cents or less than that, you enable crop insurance and advisory in all developing countries to use technology. At the moment it's like no technology at all. You just send around people to look at what crops are growing and what is it and so on. So these are two places that we are trying to see how we can make a difference, and what exactly the customer wants to enable the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so. So Neha, you actually fall in the same bucket, right? So you are operating again the low Earth orbital satellites meant for communication, where your competition in your case is, in his case, the competition are small companies which have grown big with VC money. In your case, the competition is larger companies who want to actually get into the communication space, who are very well funded, who are operating in the same space. So how do you see the competition in that faring up? Because you want to offer essentially being able to have broadband internet has been a pipe dream for the last 20 years, right? I mean, the companies which have been trying, the ones which failed before 2000, obviously because the cost of the satellite was very expensive. Now, the fact that satellites could be built very cheaply, there still are a lot of additional costs which come in, which is one of the reasons why not too many people are there. But if you were to compare yourself to SpaceX or to the other companies which have come up, how do you see being different, and what's the value proposition which things come up?
So if I were to just summarize our differentiation in one line, our technology is what makes us better. I'll just give you some numbers in terms of that. Let's say our biggest competitor right now is OneWeb, which is a company who's backed by the Virgin Group, and is going to launch something like 900 microsatellites in low Earth orbit to provide internet connectivity globally. So each of their satellite, for example, can provide has a total capacity of something like 8 Gbps. And that's because of them operating in lower frequency band using established technology, not really playing on the technology front. Whereas we as a company, we are playing on the technology front. We are developing very niche, innovative technology that's going to give each of our satellites a capacity of 100 Gbps. So how, like, why do these numbers matter? So I'll just, quickly summarize that. So to launch a transponder in space, which can provide that 8 Gbps or 100 Gbps capacity, you need to spend something like $3 million at the minimum. This is like the minimum cost that I'm quoting. The cost can be even 10 times this, depending on what kind of platform and where you're launching. Now, if for the same money you can get 12 times more capacity, or what capacity at the end means is that each of the consumer on ground can get higher bandwidth internet connectivity, or you can serve more number of people with the same equipment. Now, that's where our innovation lies, as compared to OneWeb or SpaceX, who are using, who have big money and who also, have the capacity to, make a lot many more satellites than what we have. As compared to them, we have a very innovative technology that is going to reduce the cost of internet access from space. So that's where we are different from them.
Parag, in your case, white spaces, you've been pushing white spaces for a long time. I mean, you've always been a hardware manufacturer. You were making chips. Now you decided that you'll make a full end-to-end system.
Right.
So being in this industry for a while now, what, 9 years, and fighting against the government, because one of the biggest problems with new spectrum or you utilizing that spectrum has always been this argument about pricing in that spectrum, right? Saying, is it really about the technology, or is it really about the spectrum pricing?
Right.
And so your thoughts in terms of how do you tackle this?
Yeah, so basically I think I'll split my answers in two parts. One is the quantification of the costs that actually are spoken about. The spectrum costs are high, right? And the other part is actually the social impact of what we're doing. So actually, just to take a step back, when we first started to hear about Digital India, and we wanted to build solutions for it, like I was telling you earlier during lunch, we thought, are we the new Marie Antoinette, right? Don't have roti, go order them online, right? But like I said, information is power, right? If you look at, and there's been a Supreme Court ruling also, I think people oft quoted that, all spectrum has to be auctioned, right? But if you look at Wi-Fi, it's not. In India it is unlicensed. So there is a small fine print that the Supreme Court has apparently said, the lawyers can say that, find that except in cases where it's used for the public good. Now, there's a 700 megahertz spectrum auction coming up shortly, right? And the prices are exorbitant. Quantitatively, if you look at it, Wi-Fi, just unlicensing Wi-Fi in the US has resulted in a economic value of about $200 billion, just the US. Compare that against a few $1 billion that you would get into the treasury. Second thing is, one of the reasons spectrum is also scarce here worldwide is basically because, the regime that we have operated so far for spectrum policies worldwide has been static. So if you take an analogy to, say, to roads, it's like every operator has his own road, right? Airtel has his own road and all of it. And most of the time there's no traffic on that. It makes sense to kind of move traffic from one to other. So there is until now there weren't technologies, there weren't solutions, but now there are technologies and solutions that actually help you do a more dynamic, go to a more dynamic regime, so you can access spectrum more dynamically. So technically, so if you look at it, just in the communication history itself, right? You just look at between 1950s and now, there are probably only 2 or 3 standards that were defined, right? One for digital analog TV, one for AM and one FM, that's it. So between 2000 and 2010, if you look at it, there have been at least some 10 or 15 standards defined. So, 6 or 10 in digital, 4 or 5 in in mobile communications. So we have got near field communications, you've got cellular, you've got local area networks, so on and so forth, and of course space, satellite and all of that. So going forward, we believe there's going to be a hyper personalization of these things, right? As networks get smarter, you would actually, your phone would not know, today the chipsets in your phones or in your modems are actually hardwired for doing 3G, 4G, or they switch between 3G and 4G or 2G on your network. Eventually, the phone itself, the system itself becomes so smart that each individual user can actually get his own or her own modulation scheme. So that's where we are going to. And once you go to that regime, you are able to get this is an artificial scarcity, so that scarcity goes off. And secondly is the social impact. I like I told you, right, this is something the treasury always has to balance out. On the one hand, you have you have got immediate revenue coming in from selling spectrum, and secondly, it gives you a few $1 billion. But then, if it's also shown that unlicensing spectrum typically, or increasing the connectivity in a population, every 10% gives you about a % increase in GDP. So you need to figure out how you want to make your money, right? So that's the overall thing. And finally, like I said, information is power. The social angle, right? I quote this. I've told you that also during I discussed it quite a few times. In a super economic style, there has been a analysis of actually, and most of us feel that these Saas Bahu serials have been actually, regressive, right? Most of us find it regressive. So the so-called urban population finds it regressive. There is a study which actually has shown that that's helped women empowerment more than all the government schemes put together. The reason is simple. We feel, women apparently, it seems, in villages are used to getting beaten up, right? That they think it's normal because everybody gets beaten up. Now here they see women taking decisions. It's huge. So I think that mindset change is important, and that's where I think even in defense electronics, I think or even in military communications in India is important. That's what the Honorable Rakshana Mantri has been saying. The mindset has to change, right? So not everybody is out there to cheat them, and also and it can be done here in India, right? A lot of times, it's that classic elephant who's tied to the chain. So he grows stronger. He still doesn't know that he's strong enough.
So actually, because in your case, and
Yeah.
given with the theme, right, and the one is the commercial and the social part of it.
Right.
The other is, given the fact that the utility of being able to transmit good amount of data over a
Right.
backhaul network, especially in military areas.
Right.
So when you took the white space idea to military people out in either in Northern Command or in Eastern Command, any of these places where fibers have not been laid out, what's been the military's response to using this as a communication mechanism right now?
Well, I think white space doesn't make sense in the military communication because they've got spectrum, right? They are the ones who have got the largest spectrum. White space is more. I'll take a step back. Why did the term white space come in? It's because of the digital dividend in what's so-called digital dividend in the developed world, where when digital TV was introduced, a lot of spectrum in the 400 to 700 became available for use, right? So as part of the social obligations, the respective regulators in the US, UK, and other places decided that in between two TV channels, you have some space that can be used for some communication. Now, by definition, a white space device, though technically there's no white space in India because we don't have private TV broadcasters in India, but DD has all the spectrum between 500 and 600, so in that sense it's greenfield. But white space it's just like Xerox in India, right? Photocopier is Xerox, right? So white space is a term for a larger set of technologies that actually are very spectrally efficient, they are cognitive, and also protect the primary incumbent and are able to dynamically move out if ordered to. So I think in the defense area, we sell the same product probably mostly as an OFDM IP modem or a point-to-multipoint solution for things like tactical communication systems and a different form factor for the battlefield management and so on.
So Anand, actually